The clock on the wall showed 11:47 p.m. when Lee Tae-ho finally pushed his chair back from the microscope. His eyes burned from staring at tiny sea creatures for the past 6 hours. The Seoul Oceanographic Institute was quiet now, with only the hum of machines keeping the fish tanks alive. Tae-ho rubbed his tired eyes and looked at his notes. Tomorrow he would present his research about deep-sea bacteria to the university board. These tiny creatures could help make new medicines, but first he needed to understand how they lived in the crushing darkness of the ocean depths. He packed his laptop and research papers into his old brown bag. The security guard, Mr. Choi, waved at him from the front desk as he walked toward the exit. "Working late again, Dr. Lee?" the old man asked with a smile. "You know how it is," Tae-ho replied. "The bacteria don't care what time it is." Mr. Choi laughed and buzzed him through the glass doors. "Drive safe. The roads are icy tonight." Outside, Seoul's winter air hit Tae-ho like a cold slap. Snow was falling in thick, wet flakes that stuck to his glasses. He pulled his coat tighter and walked quickly toward the parking garage. His breath came out in white puffs as he hurried between the dark buildings. The parking garage was almost empty. His small blue car sat alone under a flickering light. Tae-ho fumbled for his keys with cold fingers. He was thinking about the presentation tomorrow and wondering if he should change slide number 12 when he heard footsteps behind him. 3 shapes moved out of the shadows. They were tall, much taller than any human, and they walked in a strange way that made no sound. In the dim light, Tae-ho could see they had long arms and legs that bent at odd angles. Their heads were shaped like triangles with large black eyes that reflected the garage lights. "Lee Tae-ho," one of them said. Its voice sounded like grinding metal. "You will come with us." Tae-ho dropped his keys. His heart started beating so fast he could hear it in his ears. "I don't understand," he said, backing toward his car. "Who are you? What do you want?" The creatures stepped closer. Now he could see their skin was dark gray and looked like the shell of an insect. They wore black clothes that seemed to absorb light. One of them held a device that glowed blue and made a soft humming sound. "Human specimen required," the creature said. "You have been selected? Selected for what?" Tae-ho asked, but he was already moving. Years of swimming had kept him in good shape, and he turned to run. He made it 3 steps before the blue light hit him. Every muscle in his body stopped working at once. He fell forward onto the cold concrete, unable to move anything except his eyes. The device had done something to his nervous system. The creatures walked over to him. One of them picked him up easily, holding him like he weighed nothing. Up close, he could see their faces were not quite right. They had no nose, just 2 small holes. Their mouths were full of sharp teeth arranged in rows like a shark. "Transport ready," one of them said into a small device on its wrist. The air above them began to shimmer like heat waves. A large dark shape appeared, floating silently in the air. It was some kind of ship, but unlike any aircraft Tae-ho had ever seen. The bottom opened up, and a beam of light pulled all 4 of them upward. Inside the ship, everything was made of the same dark metal. The walls curved in ways that hurt to look at. The creatures carried Tae-ho through narrow hallways that seemed to twist and turn without following any pattern he could understand. They threw him into a small room with metal walls and a heavy door that had no handle on the inside. As soon as they left, feelings started to return to his body. His fingers tingled, then his arms, then his legs. After a few minutes, he could sit up. The room was barely big enough for him to lie down. There was a small hole in one wall that he guessed was for waste, and a slot near the door where they might put food. A thin mattress lay on the floor, and the air smelled like metal and something sour he could not identify. Tae-ho sat on the mattress and tried to understand what had happened. Aliens, real aliens, had kidnapped him from a parking garage in Seoul. It seemed impossible, but the metal walls around him were very real. He could hear sounds through the walls. Other voices, speaking in languages he did not know. Some sounded human. His stomach dropped as he realized he was not the only person. They had taken, hours passed, or maybe days. It was impossible to tell time in the windowless cell. The creatures brought him water and some kind of gray paste that tasted like nothing. He forced himself to eat it because he needed to stay strong. Eventually, the ship stopped moving. Taeho had felt it accelerating and turning, but now everything was still. Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside his cell. The door opened with a loud clang. Two of the insect-like creatures stood in the doorway. "Move," one of them said. They led him through the ship to a larger room where dozens of humans sat on the floor. Men, women, children, people of all ages. From all over the world. Some were crying quietly. Others stared at nothing with empty eyes. A few whispered to each other in different languages. Taeho recognized some faces from news reports. A famous chef from Tokyo, a soccer player from Brazil, a young scientist from Germany whose research he had read. These creatures were taking people from everywhere on Earth. An older Korean man sitting near the wall looked up at him. "You're new," he said quietly. "What's your name?" "Lee Taho. I'm a marine biologist." "You?" Park Min-soo. "I used to be in the army." The man's eyes were hard but kind. "How long were you alone in the cell?" "I don't know. Maybe 2 days?" Park Min-soo nodded. "They keep us separate at first, then put us together for transport. We're going somewhere they call the markets." "Markets?" A woman sitting nearby turned toward them. She was young, maybe in her 20s, with short black hair and intelligent eyes. "Kim Dae-yoon," she said, introducing herself. "I'm an engineer. I've been listening to their conversations. They sell us." The words hit Taeho like ice water. "Sell us? To who?" "Other aliens," Yi said. "Apparently humans are good for entertainment. We fight well and don't give up easily. That makes us valuable." Taeho felt sick. He thought about his research, his quiet life studying tiny creatures in the ocean. Now he was going to be sold like an animal to fight for the amusement of aliens he had never imagined existed. "How long until we reach these markets?" he asked. Park Min-soo looked grim. "The others who have been here longer say about 1 more day." Taeho closed his eyes and tried not to think about what would happen when they arrived. Around him, dozens of other humans waited in fear for a future none of them wanted. Outside the ship, stars he had never seen before shone down on them as they traveled toward an unknown fate. The alien ship shook and made grinding noises as it docked somewhere. Through the metal walls, Taeho could hear other ships moving around outside. Voices spoke in languages that sounded like machines talking to each other. "We're at a fuel station," Park Min-soo whispered to the group of humans huddled together. "I've been on 3 of these trips. They always stop here before the markets." Kim Dae-yoon looked up from where she sat near the wall. "How do you know?" "The sounds," Min-soo said. "Fuel pumps, cargo loading, other ships coming and going. This is where they get ready for the final jump to the slave markets." Taeho felt his stomach turn. Every hour that passed took him further from Earth and closer to whatever horrible fate waited for them. Around him, other prisoners sat in silence. Some had given up hope completely. Others still had fire in their eyes, but what could they do locked in a metal box surrounded by aliens? Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. The door opened with its usual loud clang. 2 of the insect creatures stood there, but something was different. They looked nervous. Their large black eyes kept moving back and forth, watching the hallway behind them. "Inspection," one of them said in its grinding voice. "Official business. All prisoners remain quiet." The door slammed shut again, but Taeho could hear them talking outside. Their voices sounded worried. He pressed his ear to the metal wall and tried to listen. "Inspector coming aboard," one creature said. "Papers all ready?" asked another. "Yes, but Inspector very thorough. Check everything. Very dangerous if find problems." Kim Dae-yoon crawled over to where Taeho was listening. "What are they saying?" "Someone's coming to inspect the ship," he whispered back. The guards sounded scared. For the next hour they waited. The ship filled with new sounds. Footsteps that were different from the heavy stomping of their captors. These steps were lighter, quicker, more controlled. Doors opened and closed throughout the ship. Voices spoke in a language none of them recognized. Then the sounds of fighting began. It started with a loud crash from somewhere above them, then shouting in multiple alien languages. The prisoners looked at each other with confusion and growing hope. Something was happening. A high-pitched whining sound filled the air, like a machine charging up. Then came sounds that were definitely weapons firing. The ship's lights flickered and went out for a few seconds before coming back on. "What's going on up there?" asked a woman from Germany. Before anyone could answer, they heard running footsteps in the corridor outside their prison. Something slammed into their door from the other side. The metal bent inward with a loud bang. Another impact. The door bent more. On the third hit, the heavy door flew off its hinges and crashed to the floor. In the doorway stood the strangest creature Tejo had ever seen. It was wearing some kind of armor that covered its whole body, but the armor was built for someone very small. The figure couldn't be more than 1 meter tall, barely reaching Tejo's chest if he was standing. The armor was dark blue with silver lines running through it that glowed softly. The helmet had a clear front panel, and through it Tejo could see a face that was almost human, but not quite. The skin was pale blue, and the eyes were larger than human eyes and colored like gold. Most shocking of all, it was clearly female. Even through the armor, the shape was obviously a woman, just very small and alien. She stepped into the room and looked around at all the human prisoners. When she spoke, her voice came through the helmet speaker system in perfect Korean. "Is anyone hurt?" she asked. The prisoners stared at her in shock. After days of being surrounded by the terrifying insect creatures, this small armored figure seemed impossible. Park Min-soo was the first to recover. "We're okay," he said carefully. "Who are you?" "My name is Yuki," she replied, still in Korean. "I am a health and safety inspector with the Galactic Trade Authority. This ship was conducting illegal operations." "Illegal operations?" Kim D-yoon asked. "Slave trading," Yuki said simply. "It is forbidden in this sector of space. The creatures that captured you are criminals." Tejo found his voice. "What happened to them?" Yuki turned her golden eyes toward him. "They are no longer a problem. Some escaped in lifeboats. The rest are unconscious and will be arrested when the authorities arrive." She moved with surprising grace despite the heavy armor. From a pack on her belt, she pulled out what looked like a medical scanner and began checking each prisoner. "You are all from the planet Earth," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," Min-soo answered. "They've been taking people from all over our world," Yuki nodded as she worked. "We have been tracking this particular group of slavers for several months. Your transport was the evidence we needed to shut down their entire operation." As she scanned Tejo, he got a closer look at her face through the helmet. Her features were delicate but strong, and there was something about her eyes that suggested great intelligence and determination. "How did you defeat them?" he asked. "There were at least a dozen of those things, and they're 3 times your size." A sound came from Yuki's helmet that might have been laughter. "Size is not everything. My people come from a world with very strong gravity. What seems heavy to you feels light to me. What seems fast to you feels slow to me." She finished her scans and stood up. "You are all in good health considering what you have been through. The medical bay on my ship has better equipment if anyone needs treatment." "Your ship?" Da-yoon asked. "Yes. We will need to transfer you there while we wait for the rescue vessels to arrive. This ship is now a crime scene and must be secured." Yuki walked to the doorway and looked out into the corridor. Satisfied it was safe, she turned back to the prisoners. "Follow me closely and stay together. The corridors can be confusing, and some areas of the ship may still have dangerous equipment." As they left the prison room, Tejo saw the results of Yuki's work. The corridor walls were scorched with weapon burns. Pieces of broken equipment were scattered everywhere. Several of the insect creatures lay unconscious on the floor, their weapons torn apart. All of this destruction had been caused by one small alien woman who barely reached his shoulder. "How long have you been tracking these slavers?" he asked as they walked. 8 standard months, Yuki replied. "They have been very careful, very smart, but they made one mistake." "What mistake?" She looked back at him with those strange golden eyes. They underestimated humans. Most species either break completely when captured or become so violent they get themselves killed quickly. But humans do something different. What do? You adapt, you form groups, you take care of each other. You never stop looking for a way to survive and escape. That makes you very hard to control, which means the slavers had to take extra risks to transport you. They reached an airlock where Yuki's ship was connected to the slave vessel. Her ship was sleek and silver, much cleaner than the dark metal prison they were leaving behind. As they boarded, Taeho realized something had changed inside him. For the first time since his capture, he felt hope. This strange small warrior had not just rescued them. She had shown him that there were others in the galaxy who cared about justice and protecting the innocent. He didn't know it yet, but meeting Yuki would change his life forever. Yuki's ship was nothing like the dark prison vessel they had escaped from. The walls were smooth and white, glowing with soft light that didn't hurt their eyes. The air smelled clean and fresh, like a spring morning after rain. For the first time in days, Taeho felt like he could breathe properly. "Please sit wherever you are comfortable," Yuki said as she led the group of rescued humans into a large room with cushioned benches along the walls. "Medical supplies are coming and food that is safe for your species." She moved to a control panel and began pressing buttons with quick, practiced movements. Her armor made soft humming sounds as it powered down systems that were no longer needed. For combat. Park Min-soo looked around the clean, bright space. "This is your ship?" "Yes," Yuki replied without looking up from her controls. "It is designed for long missions tracking criminals across multiple star systems. I have been living here for almost a year while following these particular slavers." Kim Dayun walked over to one of the windows and stared out at the space station where they had docked. "You've been hunting them for a year?" "The slave ring is much larger than just one ship," Yuki explained. "They have operations in 7 different sectors. The ship that captured you was only a small part of their business." A section of the wall slid open and a mechanical arm extended holding a tray of food and medical supplies. The food looked strange but smelled good. There were fruits that glowed softly and some kind of bread that was purple but tasted like honey. As the humans ate and began to recover from their ordeal, Yuki removed her helmet. Her face was even more striking without the armor covering it. Her skin had a slight blue tint, and her golden eyes seemed to see everything at once. Her hair was white and cut short in a practical style. "You speak Korean very well," Taeho said. "How did you learn our language?" "I study the cultures of species that are targeted by slavers," Yuki replied. "Knowledge of your languages and customs helps me understand how criminals exploit you. Your planet Earth has been marked as a target for several months now." The words sent a chill through all the rescued humans. "Marked as a target?" "Min-soo," asked Yuki nodded grimly. "Earth is what we call a developing world. Your technology is not advanced enough to defend against space-based attacks, but your people show qualities that make them valuable in illegal markets." "What kinds of qualities?" Dayun asked. "Intelligence, creativity, the ability to work together under pressure. Most importantly, humans do not give up easily. Even when facing impossible odds, you continue to fight and hope. This makes you excellent. Entertainment for the kind of aliens who enjoy gladiator games." Taeho felt sick thinking about it. "How many humans have they taken from your world?" "Several thousand over the past 6 months. From other worlds like yours? Millions over many years." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. Finally, an elderly man who had been quiet until now spoke up. "What happens to us?" "Now, you will be taken to a refugee station where you can receive proper medical care and counseling," Yuki said. "From there, we will try to arrange transport back to Earth, though it may take some time." "What about the slavers?" Taeho asked. "Will they just find other humans to capture?" Yuki's golden eyes focused on him with new interest. "That depends on whether we can find and stop the rest of their operation. It is dangerous work that requires someone who understands how humans think and behave." Something in her tone made Taeho pay closer attention. You mean you need a human to help you? Perhaps, Yuki said carefully. But it would mean staying in space, traveling to dangerous places, and facing creatures much worse than the ones who captured you. Most rescued prisoners want only to go home and forget what happened to them. Teho thought about his quiet life back on Earth, studying tiny sea creatures in his laboratory. Then he thought about the thousands of other humans who might be captured and sold while he was safe at home. I want to help, he said. Minsu looked at him with surprise. Teho, you're a scientist, not a soldier. Maybe that's exactly what she needs, Teho replied, still looking at Yuki. Someone who thinks differently than a warrior would. Yuki studied him for a long moment. It would be very dangerous. My people, the Kethmori, were once slaves ourselves, centuries ago. We understand the importance of stopping those who trade in lives. But the work requires someone who can think like both predator and prey. What do you mean? You must understand how the slavers choose their targets, how they plan their attacks, and how they avoid being caught. But you also must understand what the victims are feeling and thinking so you can predict their behavior and find them before it is too late. Dayun shook her head. It sounds like you need a whole team of specialists. Perhaps, Yuki said. But sometimes one person with the right combination of skills is more valuable than many specialists working separately. Over the next few hours, as they waited for the refugee transport to arrive, Yuki told them more about the galaxy they had been thrown into. There were hundreds of intelligent species, most of them peaceful traders and explorers. But there were also predators who saw weaker species as resources to be harvested. The Galactic Council tries to maintain order, she explained, but space is vast and law enforcement is limited. Much of the work of protecting innocent species falls to individuals and small groups who are willing to take risks. Like you, Teho said. Like me, she agreed. And like others who have chosen to fight rather than look away from injustice. She told them about her own people's history, how the Kethmori had been conquered by a militaristic empire and forced to work in mines and factories. Their small size had made them seem weak to their captors, but it had also allowed them to move unseen through ventilation systems and maintenance tunnels. We learned to use our size as an advantage, Yuki said. What others saw as weakness, we turned into strength. Over many generations, we became experts at infiltration and guerrilla warfare. Eventually, we freed ourselves and helped free others. Is that why you do this work now? Minsu asked. Partly, but also because I have seen what slavery does to people. It breaks something inside them that is very hard to repair. Better to stop it from happening than to try to heal the damage afterward. When the refugee transport arrived, most of the rescued humans eagerly boarded it. They wanted medical care, proper food, and ultimately passage back to Earth, but Teho lingered behind. Are you sure about this? Yoon asked him before she left. You have a life back home? I have a job back home, Teho corrected. But maybe this is more important than studying bacteria. Maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing. After the others left, Yuki and Teho stood alone in her ship. She looked at him with those penetrating golden eyes. The work is not glamorous, she warned. Long hours, constant danger, and very little thanks from anyone. Most people prefer not to. Think about the dark things that happen in the galaxy. The bacteria I study live in the deepest, darkest parts of the ocean, Teho said. I'm used to looking for life in places other people ignore. Yuki smiled for the first time since he had met her. Then perhaps we will work well together. 3 weeks into their partnership, Teho was beginning to understand why Yuki worked alone. Tracking criminals across the galaxy required patience, careful planning, and the ability to think like both hunter and hunted. It was not so different from his research work, except instead of studying tiny sea creatures, he was studying the behavior patterns of alien slavers. The next target should be here, Yuki said, pointing to a star map displayed on the ship's main screen. The Corvani have been hitting developing worlds in this region every 2 weeks. If the pattern holds, they will strike the 4th planet in this system within the next few days. Tejo studied the information they had gathered from their previous raids. The population there is about 6 million, mostly farmers and small traders, no real military to speak of. Perfect victims from their perspective, Yuki agreed grimly. Easy to capture, no one to defend them, and far enough from major trade routes that no one will investigate disappearances quickly. They had successfully shut down 3 more slaver operations since leaving the refugee station. Each victory had taught Tejo more about how these criminals operated. They always chose isolated targets. They always struck at night or during local festivals when people were distracted. And they always took more victims than they could easily control, which created opportunities for rescue operations. I still don't understand why they take so many at once, Tejo said as he reviewed the data. Smaller groups would be easier to manage. Greed, Yuki replied simply. The more slaves they deliver, the more money they make. They are willing to accept higher risks for higher profits. And that's what we use against them. Exactly. Their greed makes them predictable, and their large operations make them vulnerable. Over the past weeks, Tejo had learned much more than criminal psychology. Yuki had been teaching him basic combat techniques, how to use the ship's various systems, and even some of the Kethmori language. In return, he had helped her understand human behavior in ways that made their rescue operations much more effective. When humans are captured, they form social groups very quickly, he had explained. After their second successful raid, they choose leaders, they share resources, and they create plans together. If you can identify the natural leaders, they will help you organize the others during a rescue. Most species do not do this, from what I've seen, no. Most either panic completely or become so aggressive they hurt themselves and others. Humans find a middle path that focuses on survival and cooperation. This insight had made their recent rescues much smoother. Instead of trying to control dozens of panicked individuals, they could work with the natural leaders who emerged among the captives. As they approached the 4th planet, their sensors detected the familiar energy signature of a Corvani slave ship hiding behind one of the system's moons. There, Yuki said with satisfaction. Right where we predicted. How do we approach this one? Tejo asked. They'll be expecting some kind of law enforcement response after losing so many ships. We don't approach as law enforcement, Yuki said with a small smile. We approach as customers. The plan was risky but clever. Yuki had acquired fake identification documents that would allow them to pose as buyers at the slave auction. Tejo would play the role of her human servant, which would explain his presence and give him access to the captured victims. Remember, Yuki instructed as they prepared for the mission. Kethmori are known to be wealthy collectors of rare specimens. They will not question my interest in purchasing humans, especially if I seem willing to pay premium prices. Tejo adjusted the collar that marked him as a servant. It felt wrong to pretend to be enslaved, but he understood the necessity. What if they recognized me from the other raids? Different crews, Yuki assured him. The Corvani do not share information well between their various operations. That is another weakness we can exploit. The auction was held in a large cargo bay filled with cages containing beings from dozens of different worlds. The humans were kept in a separate section, and Taho's heart broke to see the fear and desperation in their eyes. Many were families with children. All looked like they had given up hope. I am interested in the human specimens, Yuki announced to the Corvani auctioneer in the harsh trade language used throughout this sector of space. I collect rare species for research purposes. The insect-like creature's black eyes gleamed with greed. Excellent choice. Humans are very popular lately. Strong, intelligent, and they provide excellent entertainment value. I prefer them for scientific study, Yuki replied coldly. Entertainment is for those with less refined interests. As they walked through the human cages, Tejo made eye contact with as many prisoners as possible. Using hand signals he and Yuki had developed, he let them know that rescue was coming. The natural leaders among the groups began quietly preparing the others. These 20 specimens should be sufficient for my current research, Yuki told the auctioneer, pointing to a group that included several families with children. The negotiation took almost an hour, but eventually they agreed on a price that made the Corvani very happy. As fake payment was processed through shell accounts Yuki had established, Teiho positioned himself near the ship's critical systems. "Payment confirmed," the auctioneer announced. "Specimens will be transferred to your vessel immediately." That was the signal. Yuki's combat armor activated instantly, covering her small frame in powered metal. Teiho triggered the electromagnetic pulse device they had hidden in his servant collar, which disabled the ship's weapons and communication systems. The battle was swift and decisive. Yuki moved through the cargo bay like a force of nature, her enhanced speed and strength allowing her to disable multiple Corvani before they could react. Teiho focused on freeing the prisoners and guiding them toward escape routes. "This way," he called to the humans in Korean, English, and Spanish. "Stay together and follow the emergency lights." But this raid was different from the others. As they were leading the rescued prisoners toward Yuki's ship, alarms began sounding throughout the facility. More Corvani soldiers were arriving, and these were better armed and trained than the usual slaver crews. "We have a problem," Yuki's voice crackled through their communication devices. "This was a trap. They were expecting us." Teiho found himself separated from Yuki in the chaos, leading a group of rescued children through a maze of corridors while armed Corvani searched for them. His heart pounded as he realized he was now responsible for protecting people who depended on him for survival. Drawing on everything Yuki had taught him about tactical thinking, he led the group through maintenance tunnels and storage areas, always staying one step ahead of their pursuers. When they reached a dead end, he used his knowledge of ship systems to override security doors and create new escape routes. "How do you know how to do this?" asked a young girl who couldn't have been more than 10 years old. "A friend taught me," Teiho replied as he worked on another door control. "She taught me that being small and smart is better than being big and strong." When they finally reached the evacuation point, Yuki was waiting with the rest of the rescued prisoners. She had successfully fought off the trap, but there were scorch marks on her armor and she was moving more carefully than usual. "Are you hurt?" Teiho asked. "Nothing that won't heal," she replied. "But I am impressed. You saved 15 people while being hunted by armed soldiers. That was excellent work." As they flew away from the destroyed slaver base, Teiho realized something had changed between them. They were no longer mentor and student or even just partners. They had become a team that could trust each other completely, even in the most dangerous situations. "There is one more target," Yuki said as she treated her injuries in the medical bay. "The regional commander who has been organizing all these operations. His name is Lord Veskith, and he operates from a fortress station in neutral space." "How dangerous?" "Very, but if we can capture him and his records, we can shut down slave operations across 7 sectors. Thousands of beings will be saved." Teiho looked at her determined face and felt something he had never experienced before. It wasn't just admiration for her courage or gratitude for being rescued. It was something deeper, a connection that went beyond their shared mission. "Then that's what we'll do," he said simply. Yuki smiled, and for a moment her warrior's mask slipped to show the person underneath. "I was hoping you would say that." Lord Veskith's fortress station hung in space like a metal spider, its arms stretching out in all directions. Weapon platforms bristled from every surface, and patrol ships moved in careful patterns around the structure. It was designed to be impossible to attack directly. "No wonder he's been operating freely for so long," Teiho said as they studied the station from a safe distance. "That place is built like a fortress." "All fortresses have weaknesses," Yuki replied, but her voice carried less confidence than usual. "The question is finding them before they find us." They had spent 2 days observing the station, mapping its defenses and looking for patterns in the patrol schedules. The station was much larger and better defended than anything they had faced before. "The main problem is the sensor grid," Yuki explained, pointing to the tactical display. "They can detect any ship approaching from parsecs away. Even if we could fight our way past the patrols, they would have plenty of time to prepare defenses or escape." "What if we didn't approach by ship?" Teiho asked. "What do you mean?" Teho had been thinking about his old research work studying creatures that lived in the deepest parts of Earth's oceans. In the deep sea, some creatures survive by mimicking their environment so perfectly that predators can't see them. What if we could hide inside something that belongs here? You mean infiltrate a supply ship? Better than that, Teho said, pulling up the sensor data they had collected. Look at these patterns. Every 6 hours, automated waste disposal pods are ejected from the station. They follow a set trajectory to a processing facility 3 systems away. Yuki studied the information carefully. The pods are too small to carry people, but they're not too small to carry a virus. It took Teho several minutes to explain his plan, and when he finished, Yuki stared at him with amazement. You want to infect their environmental systems with modified bacteria from Earth's deep-sea vents? Not exactly bacteria, Teho corrected. I want to use the same principles but with nanoscale machines that can survive in their recycled air system. Once inside, they can disrupt the station's environmental controls and create chaos. That is either brilliant or insane, Yuki said slowly. Maybe both. The plan required Teho to build a biological weapon using equipment from Yuki's ship. It was delicate work that took him back to his days in the laboratory, except now instead of studying harmless sea creatures, he was creating something that could disable an entire space station. The nanomachines will multiply in their air recycling system, he explained as he worked. After about 12 hours, they'll start interfering with atmospheric processors throughout the station. The air will become thick and hard to breathe, like being at very high altitude. Will it kill them? No, but it will make them sluggish and confused. Most importantly, it will force them to focus on fixing their life support systems instead of watching for intruders. They loaded the nanomachines into a fake waste pod and launched it toward the station, then they waited. 12 hours felt like 12 days, but finally their sensors detected signs of chaos aboard the fortress. Emergency broadcasts, Yuki reported, listening to intercepted communications. They're reporting system failures throughout the station. Life support is failing on 17 levels. That's our cue. Yuki's ship was designed for stealth operations, but even she had never tried to infiltrate a target this heavily defended. They approached from the station's blind side, using the confusion of the emergency to slip past patrol ships that were rushing back to help with the crisis. Docking Bay 7 is closest to the Central Command Center, Yuki said as they attached to the station's hull. But it will be heavily guarded. Not if everyone is busy trying to breathe, Teho replied. They were right. The corridors inside the station were filled with aliens struggling with the thickened atmosphere. Most were focused on reaching emergency oxygen supplies or repair stations. Those who noticed the intruders were too weak to fight effectively. This way, Yuki whispered, leading them through maintenance passages toward the command center. Her armor's life support system protected her from the atmosphere problems. While Teho wore a portable breathing unit, they encountered serious resistance only once, when a group of Corvani soldiers tried to stop them in a main corridor. But the guards were weakened by the bad air, and their movements were slow and clumsy. Yuki disabled them quickly and efficiently. The command center should be just ahead, she said as they approached a heavily armored door. The door was locked with multiple security systems, but Teho had learned a few things about alien technology during their weeks together. While Yuki provided cover, he used techniques learned from studying the environmental systems to bypass the electronic locks. Got it, he said as the door slid open. Lord Veskith was waiting for them inside. The Corvani commander was larger than any of his species they had encountered before, standing nearly 3 meters tall with armor that looked like it was built from black metal and sharp edges. His 4 arms each held a different weapon, and his triangular head turned toward them with obvious hatred. So, he said in the grinding voice typical of his species, the little Kethmori warrior and her pet human have finally come to visit me. Lord Veskith, Yuki replied calmly, her own weapons ready. You are under arrest for crimes against sapient beings. Veskith's laughter sounded like machinery breaking. You think your pathetic sabotage will stop me? I have ruled this sector for 20 years. I will not be defeated by a child and her slave. The battle that followed was unlike anything Tahoe had ever witnessed. Veskith moved with surprising speed for such a large creature, using all four arms to attack from multiple directions at once. Yuki had to use every skill she possessed just to avoid being hit, but the environmental sabotage was working in their favor. Even Veskith was affected by the thickened atmosphere, and his movements gradually became less coordinated. You fight? Well, for someone so small, the warlord taunted as he pressed his attack. But size and strength will always defeat speed and cleverness. You're wrong, Taiho called out from where he was working at the command center's main computer. Intelligence always defeats brute force eventually. While Yuki kept Veskith busy, Taiho had been accessing the station's databanks. Years of experience with complex biological systems had taught him how to navigate complicated information networks. He was downloading everything: slave routes, customer lists, financial records, the locations of other operations. Almost finished, he told Yuki through their communication system, but Veskith heard him. With a roar of rage, the warlord broke away from his fight with Yuki and charged directly at Taiho. His massive form moved faster than seemed possible. Weapons raised to strike. Taiho had no combat training, no weapons, no armor. But he had something else, the ability to think quickly under pressure. Instead of trying to run or fight, he grabbed an emergency fire suppression tank from the wall and smashed it against the floor. The tank erupted in a cloud of chemical foam designed to fight electrical fires. Combined with the already thick atmosphere, it created a dense fog that filled the entire command center. Visibility dropped to almost zero. In the chaos, Yuki struck. Her small size allowed her to move through the fog without difficulty, while Veskith's bulk made him an easy target even when he couldn't see clearly. Her weapons found their mark and the warlord crashed to the floor unconscious. Data download complete, Taiho announced as the fog began to clear. We have everything. Yuki stood over the fallen warlord, breathing hard inside her armor. That was excellent thinking with the fire suppression system. I learned from the best teacher, Taiho replied as they prepared to leave the station with their prize and the invaluable data. Yuki paused and looked at him with an expression he had never seen before. What you did today, she said quietly, saving me from Veskith's attack. That was very brave. You risked your life to protect someone else, even though you're not a trained warrior. We're partners, Taiho said simply. That's what partners do. Something in Yuki's golden eyes changed when he said that. The look she gave him was warm and personal in a way that had nothing to do with their mission. Yes, she said softly. That is exactly what partners do. As they escaped the fortress station with evidence that would shut down slavery operations across multiple sectors, Taiho realized that their partnership had become something much deeper than either of them had originally planned. 6 months after the destruction of Lord Veskith's operation, Taiho stood on a balcony overlooking the Han River in Seoul. The morning sun reflected off the water, creating patterns of light that reminded him of the stars he had traveled between. For so many weeks, Earth looked exactly the same as when he had left it, but everything felt different now. He was different now. The Galactic Council has accepted Earth's application for protected status, Yuki said, joining him on the balcony. She wore simple civilian clothes now instead of her combat armor, but she still moved with the controlled grace of a warrior. What does that mean exactly? Taiho asked. It means no more organized slave raids. Earth is now under the protection of galactic law. Any species that tries to harvest humans will face serious consequences. They watched the river flow past in comfortable silence. Below them, the city of Seoul went about its daily business, unaware that their world had just become part of something much larger. The data we recovered from Veskith's station led to over 200 arrests, Yuki continued. Slave operations in 7 sectors have been shut down completely. Thousands of beings have been freed and returned to their home worlds, including several hundred humans, Taiho added. Yes, your people are finally safe. The words should have made him happy. But Taiho felt strangely empty. Their mission was complete. The criminals were caught. Earth was protected. Soon, Yuki would return to her duties with the Galactic Protection Agency, and he would go back to his laboratory to study tiny sea creatures. "What will you do now?" he asked. "There are always more slavers to catch," Yuki replied. "New criminal. Organizations form constantly. The work never really ends. And you'll do it alone again, I suppose so, unless—" She paused and turned to look at him directly. "Unless someone wanted to continue being my partner." Something in her voice made Tahoe's heart beat faster. Over the past months, their working relationship had grown into something neither of them had expected. They had saved each other's lives. Multiple times. They had learned to think and move as one person during dangerous missions. Most importantly, they had discovered that, despite coming from completely different worlds, they understood each other perfectly. "There's something I need to tell you," Yuki said, and now her voice carried a nervousness he had never heard before. "About Kethmori culture and how we choose life partners?" "Life partners?" "My people believe that the best partnerships are forged in battle," Yuki explained. "When two warriors fight side by side and trust each other completely, it creates a bond that goes deeper than simple friendship or attraction." Tahoe felt his pulse quicken. "What kind of bond?" "The kind that lasts for life, if both people want it to." They stood facing each other on the balcony, the city spread out below them and the vast sky above. Yuki looked smaller without her armor. More vulnerable, but her golden eyes held the same determination he had seen when she first rescued him. "I know this must seem strange," she continued. "We are from different species, different worlds. There are practical problems we would have to solve. But I have never met anyone who complements my abilities the way you do." "Compliments how?" "You think in ways I cannot. You see solutions I would miss. You make me a better warrior, and I hope I have made you stronger as well." Tahoe thought about the person he had been 6 months ago, a quiet scientist who spent his days alone in a laboratory, studying creatures no one else cared about. Then he thought about who he had become, someone who could infiltrate alien fortresses, fight criminals across the galaxy, and save lives on a scale he had never imagined possible. "You did make me stronger," he said quietly. "You showed me I was capable of things I never dreamed of." "Then you understand what I am asking," Yuki said. "I am asking if you want to spend your life as my partner in every sense of the word. Fighting together, traveling together, building something together that is bigger than either of us alone." The proposal was unlike anything Tahoe had ever imagined. She was offering not just love, but adventure, purpose, and the chance to make a real difference in the galaxy. "What would it mean practically?" he asked. "Living in space, working for the Galactic Protection Agency?" "It would mean becoming Earth's first human representative in the agency," Yuki replied. "You would help protect other developing worlds from what almost happened to yours. Your insights into human behavior would be invaluable for understanding other species that might be targeted." "And personally?" Yuki stepped closer to him, and he could see flecks of silver in her golden eyes. "Personally, it would mean that I would never have to hunt criminals alone again. It would mean having someone who understands me completely, someone I can trust with my life every single day. Someone you love?" "Yes," she said simply. "Someone I love." The word hung between them like a bridge spanning the gap between two very different worlds. Tahoe realized that he had been in love with her for weeks without recognizing what the feeling was. She was brave, intelligent, kind, and dedicated to protecting innocent people. The fact that she was alien had stopped mattering long ago. "I love you too," he said, and the words felt more right than anything he had ever said before. Yuki's face lit up with a smile brighter than the sun reflecting off the river. "Is that a yes?" "That's a yes to everything," Tahoe replied. "Partnership, marriage, representing Earth in the galaxy, fighting criminals together, all of it." She stepped into his arms then, and despite their difference in height, they fit together perfectly. Her head rested against his chest, and he could feel the rapid beating of her heart matching his own. "There will be challenges," she warned. "Some beings will not understand our relationship. There will be dangerous missions and long separations and political complications. There will also be adventures I can't imagine, Tejo replied. New worlds to see, new friends to make, new problems to solve together. It sounds like the best possible life. 2 weeks later, they held their wedding ceremony in the same garden where Yuki had proposed. It was a small gathering, a few friends. From the Galactic Protection Agency, some of the humans they had rescued, and Tejo's parents who were still trying to understand how their marine biologist son had become an interstellar law enforcement officer. The ceremony blended Korean traditions with Kethmori customs. They exchanged rings made from metals found on both their homeworlds. And they spoke vows in 3 languages, Korean, Kethmori, and Universal Standard. I promise to be your partner in all things, Tejo said during the ceremony. To stand with you against any darkness, to share your burdens and your victories, and to love you across any distance the galaxy puts between us. I promise to protect what you protect and fight for what you believe in, Yuki replied. To be your companion in the stars and your refuge when the battles are over. To honor your world as you have learned to honor mine. After the ceremony, as they prepared to board Yuki's ship for their first joint mission as a married couple, Tejo's mother pulled him aside. Are you sure about this? She asked. You're giving up your career, your home, everything familiar? I'm not giving up anything, Mom, Tejo replied, watching Yuki check their equipment with the thoroughness that had kept them alive through so many dangerous missions. I'm